Welcome to Encouraging Wellness, where we shed light on the plethora of holistic healing and wellness methods so you can give yourself the power to ask why and become bigger than the condition you are dealing with or the illness you are currently fighting. Join Pamela Wirth as she sits down with doctors, medical experts, healthcare practitioners, and those with unique healing stories to dissect groundbreaking practices that combine traditional Western medicine with alternative modalities. Hear conversations that empower you to go beyond hurtful stigmas, outdated practices, and unnecessary labels, guiding you towards a healthier and happier you. Here, we highlight your true worth and help unleash your inner courage. Now your host, Pamela.
Hi, this is Pamela Wirth with Hello Health, and I am here with Amy Hamilton of Amy Hamilton Helps. And we look forward to hearing a little bit more about her story today and her journey as she has embarked in so much. We met in business school many years ago and went on those paths, and then have now found our own way in terms of what fulfills our hearts and helps people, which is the most important part. So Amy, tell us a little bit about you.
Well, it's so good to see you again. It's, we met and we were in such different places, both of us getting our MBAs, big plans, and, life has just twists and turns. So, 20 years in marketing, and I was in the process of healing my son from a really big developmental issue. And I went and, we go in, and when it's our kids, we try everything, right? Mm-hmm. And through that process, one of the places I went to was I went and consulted with a psychic, which pretty out there for what I was looking at. And she gave me fabulous information that helped heal my children. And then she said, and you can do everything I can do. And I said, you're crazy. I'm going to run a company. Well, I am, but it's a psychic company 12 years later. And now I work, help people answer their questions, work with corporate women who are, some of us deal with imposter syndrome, work with women who have kids with developmental issues. And then I work with teenagers to help them get on the path that really they were brought here on this earth to be. And it's been my most fulfilling work that I've ever done in my life. So thanks for having me today.
I think that's super. So as you kind of step through this, do you have anything that people generally ask you first and foremost, or like a certain process that you follow, or how does that typically work?
Well, a lot of people, based on my background and certain things, a lot of my focus is in the medical area. So people call that a medical intuitive. But what I do is I look in, and when I work with someone, and they're asking about a medical issue, which I see as a developmental issue. They just show up as medical issues sometimes. So I see them in 4 areas. The first is this a medical need? Do we refer to a doctor? Is there some kind of imbalance in their body? Is there something that maybe needs to have a GI consult? Is there something that we really need to look medically? The second area is, are they an empath? Is there bringing in other people's energy? So many of our kids these days feel what's going on around them. They might not have test anxiety, but they're in a room of kids who are so anxious that it brings them down.
Yeah.
The third area, if there's emotional issues that translate into physical issues, and many times we have things that are going on in our life that we can't speak, for example, and our throat hurts. We have all these throat issues and they're unexplained. A lot of times that has to do with what you're not talking about, your throat chakra, things that are areas there. And then the fourth area, which for both of us are pretty grounded in reality, is a little out there, is if there's a generational trauma, or if there's something that happened in the past life, something that doesn't reside in that person's body. If they had a development, there was history of trauma in the family, and it actually just came into their body. So those are the 4 areas I kind of look at, and then we craft a plan for how someone can move forward and heal.
So how often do you typically meet with people? What does that process kind of look like?
It really varies. So if I'm working with a VP level corporate exec who's ready for that CEO level, sometimes that's a once a week process until we can get them till they're where they want to be. Or if there's, my son has this issue and I don't know what doctor we can go to, that can be once. We can just sit down, understand what they're going through, what they have to sort of heal from, and here's 10 doctors and here's some direction.
Oh, that's super. And, as you've navigated so much, what has kind of been some of the more impactful mentors in your life? What does that kind of look like?
I love that question and I hate that question at the same time, because I have struggled with the word mentor for so long. Yeah. I think as women, we struggle with this, like, I'm going to be in charge of myself and I'm not going to rely on someone else, at least me personally, and I'm going to have someone guide me. I think one of my best mentors actually stepped in at a very critical place in business school, where I was going on a really high-powered route. I was going to take this job. We were going to go corporate strategy. It was going to be these long hours. And he, in a moment where a mentor should say, okay, here's where you can go professionally and all these things, said, what do you really want out of your life? And it totally changed my trajectory. And I really didn't realize that until 20 years later when I had what he asked about, and it was when he was asking those impactful questions. I wasn't married. I didn't have kids. I didn't have any of these things, but I feel like we have these pushes that kind of come into our life at the perfect moment. And that's kind of that I love when even if I'm meeting with someone once, if I'm able to provide that like up leveling, that push, okay, here, go this way, not that way. This way is better.
Yeah. And I certainly can relate to that too. So much of my life, I think, probably until I hit about 40, was doing things that I thought I should do rather than things that I want to do. And now I'm part of so many C-level groups. And one of the first questions we always ask each other is, what do you really want? And, I wish that we did that more as younger people and in environments where we can do that. One of the things that I try and do with everybody I work with is I do an independent development plan and really get to the bottom of what they really want in their personal, professional, and spiritual or mental space, if you will. Mm-hmm. And I just wish we did that more often, because it really took me way too long to get there.
Yeah. One of my female mentors always talks about what would future you want? What would future you in 6 months say about the situation? What do you want it to look like? What do you future you in 5 years want this to look like? And I think that gives you a lot of perspective of saying, okay, I'm stuck in this. We get stuck in our own problems so many times, but what do you want this to look like in 6 months? What do you want this to look like in 5 years? And what do you want this to look like in the future? And I think that's where those coaches and mentors are so critical, because we can't see ourselves in, 6 months you can do, but like 5 years, you need to use people who've been down a road before, who have some, who have some mileage on them, like, maybe we do now. And they can look in the rearview mirror and saying, oh, this would have been helpful at a certain moment.
Even now, I find it kind of scary to sit down and just really think on that and say, what do I really want? Because it may or may not align with the certain path that you're on today. It's just, it's kind of scary.
I would totally agree. I remember, one of those, I wouldn't say I have these long-term mentor, but I have these really impactful conversations that people might not even know that they're having with me. And I remember being at a place of pretty success, pretty young, and asking someone who I thought was super successful. I mean, she was probably my age, which I thought she was old at the time, And I said, how did you become the success? How did you get to where you know what you want? And she goes, are you talking to me? Am I an adult? Like, I'm still trying to figure it out. And what it gave me was, okay, it's okay to try something and then switch. Like, so many of us, especially women, so many of us feel like we should have all the answers, that we should know. And it's okay to change. It's okay to start. I mean, it's okay to start and say, oh, this was bad idea, but I'm going to glean the learnings that I got from a really important time and then go make another decision. I feel like we're so hard on ourselves so many times that we feel like, oh, I did the wrong thing. When in a lot of times that's actually just part of the path that you needed to be on to grow.
Yeah. I think one of the funnier things that you probably encountered too in your role as an intuitive is people probably assume that you can just see everything that's going on all the time. And I don't think that that's necessarily the case, right?
Yeah, it's the reason I laugh is because there are certain people that if they're doing, like even friends of mine, if they're doing something that, oh, they probably shouldn't be doing, they'll like not be around me because they think I have X-ray vision. And so I do a pretty good job. I've worked on this a lot over the years of turning it off and turning it on. Yeah. Because it's just too much when you feel everyone's everything all the time. Mm-hmm. And that is a lot and exhausting. And so I can't see, I mean, there's things that blindside me all the time. My husband would love me to know lottery numbers. That would be fabulous, as he says. And I just don't have those gifts. And sometimes it's just not meant to see. There are people that I've worked with and I'm like, don't get anything. I'm not your intuitive. I'm not your reader. There's other parts. And the other piece is, it's all about timing. You can see a really clear picture when it happens in 2 days or it's happening in 2 years. So anyway, but I'm able to turn it off. Here's a funny secret that a lot of psychics or intuitives have. You're able to turn it off when you're in control. But if you see me with a glass of wine, all holds barred. Don't ask me a question.
And then do you find that it's more short term that you can feel or is it also longer term, or is there like a timeline that you?
It's interesting because for every intuitive that you work with, they have a different skill set. They see things very differently. For what I see is I'm tuning into your guides, the people that are with you. So it really depends on what your people are sharing. Sometimes I was just working with a mom who has a son who's not eating very well. Mm-hmm. And she needs to go to a doctor right away. It's very short term. Here's the 4 things that have to happen right now. Versus there's others that have a longer path. And it's really how their guides share what they're supposed to be doing. Mm-hmm. So it's really, I always start out with what questions they're looking for because, a session is so much about what you need to get out of it. Someone may be calling you, they're like, I really want to get that CEO job. And we'll talk about, well, why do they want that? That might not be necessary in your life. Let's talk about all of the pieces that you want your life to look like versus my son needs to eat next week. They're very, the questions really gear what information comes through.
Oh, that's interesting. And then these guides, mm-hmm. Are there typically a certain number? Are they angels? Are they secular? Like, what does that look like?
I feel like it's a whole mix. And I use the term guides because that was what was told that you use. Yeah. But it's really the people who are around you. And sometimes that's as big as higher power, God, Jesus, whoever you connect with. And sometimes it's your grandmother who needs to share you're not taking such good care of yourself and you need to eat better. Mm-hmm. And I do find that people are with folks in times and periods of their lives. And sometimes they're louder and sometimes they're softer. I believe that everyone has different gifts and I believe everyone hears these things, but a lot of times, myself included, we like to ignore. You're somewhere, you shouldn't eat that thing. We all know. And you're like, that's not going to feel good. Like your intuition is telling you, don't do it. And you're like, oh, I'm going to. And then you feel poopy. Like we have that self-will. We're allowed, we have free will. We're allowed to do this.
No, that's cool. In the process of healing your kids, was there anything in particular that you would recommend to other people? Any sort of things or foods or process or anything in particular that kind of comes to mind that you think would be just generally helpful?
Here's the most important thing, and that I find with almost all of the parents that I work with, you're the most important. The parents, your children are a reflection of you. And that old adage of putting the oxygen mask on first is so critical. If you're putting everything into healing your child and you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not doing the right vitamins or not getting the right sleep you're not going to be able to be present. And our children, especially kids who are impacted with developmental issues, are so intuitive and they can feel our hurt and feel our pain. So the most important thing, which is the least thing that any mother or father does, is take care of yourself. Because if you're strong, you're able to be there for your child and you're able to hear your own intuition, because your gut's going to tell you this doctor feels good, this doctor doesn't feel good. But when your stomach isn't there and you haven't slept in 3 nights and you haven't taken care of yourself, it's not able to be there. So where it seems so the antithesis of what any mom wants to do, I want you to eat right. I want you to take the vitamins. I want you to do, meditate or spend a moment for yourself. I'm here at like a fabulous retreat. Do those things in even little moments because they're going to help you get to a place of intuition, which, I always feel there's 2 places. There's 2 voices we have. One is our own ego. The one that says you're stupid and has your mom's voice and your parents' voice and that mean first boss that you had and all of, the mean kids, the kindergarten, all this. That's our intuition. Those are the inner meanings that talk. And then, that's the ego. Then we have our intuition, which gives us divine guidance, information, that gut that says, you know what, I need to go down this road today, or this job might be better, or that doctor feels really good, or I should talk this mom. And that, it's very hard to hear that voice because it's nice and calm. Collectively, it's easier to hear the yelly voice, the mean voice, the one that has all of the compilation of all of our own stuff. So the more you take care of yourself and inner calm, the more you're able to hear your own inner gifts and that intuition, which is always sweet, is always calm, and gives that right direction. So that's what I would recommend.
That's awesome. Anything else besides anything that I may or may not have covered, anything related to intuition, health and wellness, anything that comes to mind that you want to share?
I want overall that it's not a point in time, it's a journey, and don't feel there's no perfection in meditating. There's no perfection in inner calm. There's no perfection in anyone. We are all here having a human experience and we all make mistakes. So try something. And if it doesn't work, then try something different. There is so much out there that is so customized, and something that works for someone else may not work for you. So try things and then adapt. It's not the end if you just do something wrong.
Yeah, no, that's super. Thank you, Amy. And if people want to learn more about you and what you do, where can they find you?
Oh, well, my website is Amy Hamilton Helps with an S. And I'm on Instagram at Amy Hamilton Helps, and they can reach out to me. I schedule private appointments and I do corporate events as well.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Amy.
Thank you.
That's it for this episode of Encouraging Wellness. We hope this serves as an eye-opener to you on new ways to approach your health and wellness. By learning both unique and the best alternative wellness and healing methods, you can live your best life. Listen to more of our episodes at www.hello.health. Be sure to subscribe to the show and leave a rating. Together, let us work towards unlocking you and your family's best self. Thank you for listening. See you on the next one.